commencer cette discussion qui sera très éducatrice, je suis sûre. Our first panelist, Dr. Lisa Ndejuru. Dr. Lisa Ndejuru holds a PhD from Concordia University, Montreal, and she is a licensed psychotherapist with certifications in Moreno psychodrama and third-party neutral conflict resolution. She is a skilled practitioner of playback theater and a co-founder of the Montreal-based Living Histories Ensemble. Born in Rwanda, she has served the Rwandan diaspora in North America for more than 25 years as an organizer, researcher, and activist. She has experimented extensively with storytelling, plays, and improvised theater. Her work is focused on individual and collective meaning making and empowerment for Black communities in the aftermath of large-scale political violence and the trauma and dislocations of our lives. Thank you, Dr. Ndejuru, for being with us today. This panelist is Lydia Nimbeshaho. Lydia, a survivor of the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi, is dedicated to fostering hope and healing through Beyond the Veil Mission, a nonprofit organization she founded. Inspired by her own experiences of tragedy and loss at the age of 6, Lydia advocates for mental health supports for Rwandans, Africans, Caribbeans, and Black communities in Canada. She raises awareness about childhood trauma, genocide, and intergenerational trauma, while collaborating with stakeholders to develop social programs and healing initiatives. With a BA in Sociology and Sexuality Studies from York University, and pursuing a Master of Divinity in Clinical Counseling at Tyndale University, Lydia is committed to making a positive impact as a psychotherapist qualifying. Thank you, Lydia, for being with us today, and welcome. Our next panelist is Dr. Patrick Rwagatare. Dr. Patrick Rwagatare est directeur du Centre de santé mentale et de traitement de l'addiction, Huye Isande Rehabilitation Center, où il s'occupe de la prise en charge des troubles liés à la consommation des substances psychoactives en dispensant des soins individualisés. Il s'agit principalement des consultations psychiatriques et psychologiques, psychothérapie individuelle, de famille et de groupe, ainsi que l'accompagnement dans le processus de réintégration socio-familiale. Psychologue expérimenté ayant travaillé dans le secteur de la santé, du bien-être et du fitness, le Dr Patrick Rwagatare est compétent en psychologie, soins de santé, recherche clinique, psychothérapie et santé mentale. Il est un excellent professionnel des services de santé et titulaire d'un doctorat en sciences psychologiques de l'Université catholique de Louvain. Merci Dr Rwagatare d'être avec nous pendant cette discussion aujourd'hui. Our last but not least panelist today is Kizito Musabimana. Kizito Musabimana is the founder and executive director of the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center, founded in 2018 after overcoming PTSD caused by the 1994 Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. In the winter of 2016, he walked from Toronto to Montreal, pulling a rickshaw as a symbol of his trauma struggles to raise awareness about PTSD challenges within the Rwandan Canadian community. RCHC's mandate to Rwandan Canadians and other members of the Black Community Society is to provide mental health services, resources, and other support for people affected by PTSD, trauma, and other mental health related effects. Kizito prides himself as a storyteller with a dream to tell successful Afro-Canadian stories to the world through building bridges and cross-sector collaboration to create a world we want to see, a more connected, self-sufficient, and just society. Thank you, Ms. Musabimana, for being with us today. You all, we are going to begin by presenting the 3 themes that we're going to be discussing today. And then we will have some questions for the panelists. I invite everybody here today to write their questions. If you have any questions as the panelists are talking, please write them down. And at the end of the discussion, we will have time for a Q&A. And you have the option of either raising your hand or writing your questions in the chat. And we will just give you the floor. You can ask your questions and get it answered. But please wait until the end of the discussion to put the questions in the chat so that our moderators, Yuhi and Pasha, can be able to collaborate everything. Thank you all for taking the time today to be with us. The three themes that we have are the social historical trends in 30 years. We have mental health interventions and support system, and we have cultural and spiritual approaches to healing. Social historical trends in Rwanda. The genocide inflicted deep wounds on Rwandans, of course, both within the country and abroad, as we know. And while those in Rwanda faced unimaginable horrors, Rwandans outside the country also experienced displacement and profound loss. Survivors grapple with trauma, and for many of them, a near constant struggle to live a normal life. The diaspora community, scattered across the globe during the genocide, continues to grapple with the intergenerational transmission of trauma, highlighting the ongoing importance of healing and reconciliation efforts. About the mental health interventions and support systems, against the backdrop of adversity, efforts to address mental health challenges have evolved, with a growing recognition of the importance of accessible and culturally sensitive interventions. This theme explores the development of mental health support systems over the past 3 decades, highlighting both successes and ongoing challenges in providing comprehensive care and, of course, promote healing. The theme on culture and spiritual approaches to healing, we are blessed because embedded within a Rwandan culture are rich traditions of resilience and healing, encompassing spiritual beliefs, communal rituals, and indigenous practices. This theme examines the role of cultural and spiritual frameworks in facilitating individual and collective healing, acknowledging the diverse ways in which Rwandans draw upon their cultural heritage to navigate trauma and foster restoration. And as we come together to explore these themes, we honor the resilience of Rwandans. And of course, of the Rwandan community, and we affirm our commitment to fostering understanding, healing, and renewal in the wake of adversity. If our panelists are ready, we can begin with questions. If you would like to put your cameras on, and for ready, we can begin with the questions. We are missing 2 panelists. Just want to make sure that everyone is on.
I'm here.
All right, perfect. Good. Is it me? I'm not seeing Dr. Rwagatare. If you hear Pasha, you can see if there's anyone waiting, or if the doctor is with us today. I'm not sure. Well, we will start with Dr. Ndejuru. Once again, thank you for being with us today. My first question is, how can mental health professionals ensure that their interventions are culturally appropriate and sensitive to the unique experiences of Rwandan survivors? Thank
you. Thank you for having me today. Si jamais quelqu'un a besoin d'entendre les choses en français, s'il vous plaît, faites-moi signe. So the term culturally appropriate or sensitive interventions refers to mental health support mechanisms that are designed with a deep understanding of the cultural, social, and individual contexts of those they aim to help. So these interventions are not one size fit all. They respect and incorporate the unique cultural narratives, values, and healing practices of the community. So for Rwandan survivors, ensuring interventions that are culturally appropriate means recognizing the complexity, the complex tapestry of their experiences, not just as survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi, but as individuals whole, with diverse stories, struggles, and strengths. So a crucial aspect of it is to acknowledge the danger of reducing their entire existence or all of their struggles to their survival of the genocide, thereby potentially overlooking other pressing issues that they might face. And so what it means is that people need to be like, practitioners need to be listening really carefully to the people they have in front of them and not reduce them into not collapse everything that they are living to the genocide, because otherwise it doesn't give people the space to be talking about, whatever they're facing now or whatever they're coming up against that may have happened before. Or sometimes when we're working with people that may not have lived the genocide but are a generation removed from it but still living with it. So the idea is, I think the first thing is to listen to the person first, right? Not make assumptions. Secondly, I think that it's also important to recognize where people are at. Like, not everybody is at the same place to work with things. So listen very carefully to where people are at in order to meet them where they're at. And then the third thing I would say is that if practitioners don't know, I think that it's really important that they be very transparent about it. And so that it's a place of trust. So if I'm thinking often, like, if it's in a private environment where people have to pay for it, maybe that means that they could have like a credit or so that they also acknowledge that they're learning, right? People are always learning, right? But just to acknowledge that maybe their training hasn't allowed them to understand all of this, that they also have to learn, right? Like whenever you meet someone new as a psychologist, you're always learning their universe, but there are added pieces to it. And if you are asking the person to teach you about it so that you can then help them, maybe there's something that should be also negotiated in terms of time and resources. I've been thinking about that. I don't know if that would be a very I don't know anybody that does that, but I think it would be fairer, so that it's acknowledged that there's a lot to be learned,
Thank you very much. I actually have a follow-up question in regards to that. So you mentioned how if like us.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
something that says people. Okay, no, it's fine.
Oh yeah, no, we have
it's fine.
of that. They have it covered.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
So how a practitioner is not very versed or they don't have any experience with any survivors, or if they don't like how to acknowledge that they're lacking in that area. I was wondering if as a person with as much experience as you have, if you have any tips for any practitioners due to that. And I know especially in Canada, you can go to a practitioner that is close, that is more affordable to you, or it's that's who you can access, and they maybe the only thing they know about Rwanda is that there was a genocide that happened, and they have absolutely no clue what is happening right now, or even the context. What are tips for other practitioners to get a clue, if I can put it that way, or to deal with the survivors that they
I think they have to educate. I mean, they have to educate themselves, right? They have to learn about things. And so sometimes what is useful, so that the teaching doesn't fall on the person who is coming to see you, right? The patient, they can contact community organizations, right? And I think that as a community organization, that is something that we can offer, is to say, well, you know, these are some primers, or this is some information that you might find useful. And to think about sort of the in psychological training, sometimes there isn't a lot of room for the social and the political, right? Like in the one-on-one sort of work that people do, sometimes it's not about the individual alone, and to take that into consideration. So there's a work that is about learning about that the genocide and what it means, but I think there's another thing. There's a second work that is to adapt what you do know, because they are professionals and they do know something, but they have to adapt what they know to the situation, mm-hmm. to the relationship that they're working with. And then there's also the idea of being clear with the other person that, you know, there's some things, and being okay with the fact that you don't know all the things, right? And being okay with the fact that, listen, there are things that I don't know. I'm going to ask questions, and are you okay with that, right? And if the person is like, whew, I don't know if I want to be like educating someone mm-hmm. on top of everything else, then that should be okay. But like not to be pretending that they know when they don't, right? And they don't have to. They know something, and maybe that is enough, right? Maybe that is enough to be present in the therapeutic relationship, and to help if they are listening to the person where they are. Because sometimes that's not what it is about. Sometimes people have issues from before, right? Sometimes it's issues from before that are meeting the now. Sometimes it's about living here, right? Sometimes it's about their children here and them. Sometimes, like, what are we actually talking about? And does it have to do with and when it does, then, you know, where's the person at in terms of speaking about things, right? Where's the, like, not everyone is able to speak right away, right? Mm-hmm. So it has to be very, very gentle, and a very, very close listening to the person in front of them.
Thank you very much.
We were talking, I don't know, were you going to talk about cultural and spiritual beliefs afterwards?
Yes, it's okay. It's the next question.
Yeah. Okay.
So how do cultural and spiritual beliefs influence the perception and management of mental health issues within the Rwandan communities? And I know you were touching on it a little bit, but if you could expand on it a little.
Well, I think that I think that we have to be very careful in assuming that we hold the same beliefs. We don't. We're not homogeneously mm-hmm. Holding the same beliefs, and so we have to be really careful when we're talking about Rwandan spiritual beliefs. We have to be really careful not to generalize, right? People can have all kinds of relationships with the other, right? Like the other, what is spiritual? Like if it's God or something else, it can be transcended, it can be immanent. We have all kinds of relationships with that, with organized religion, with cultural values. And the people in the diaspora have traveled quite a bit, so have incorporated and mixed all kinds of things. And we don't necessarily all hold traditional cultural values, mm-hmm. right? In traditional cultural values, we used to speak, for example, to our ancestors, right? Some of the Christian among us, some are Christian, are now really uncomfortable with this, where speaking to like it feels pagan, it feels incompatible with their beliefs, with their Christian faiths, right? So I think spiritual beliefs tell us about the ways we understand life and death and good and evil, the sacred and the profane, the qualities of time and space and living, right? What it means to be in the world, and what does our being in the world mean? But I think that if we want to be, as practitioners, if we want to be sensitive to the people that we're in front of, we can't assume anything.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't assume anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be willing to go where the person in front of us wants to go, right? And to leave our own stuff behind, because there are all kinds of complexities, right? Like I'm thinking about some of us are Christian, some of us struggle with the Christian faith, right? Some of us are not even are not like are Muslim or something else, right? Like there's some of us are agnostic, some of us are angry with life, with God, with all of this. So these are all things that are valid, right? Especially in the context of like intentional existential sort of elimination, right? Like some people were murdered, right? So the understanding of I am here in the world, I'm worthy, I'm wanted, I'm taking up space is not, and I want to, it's very complicated, or not complicated, but it's complex. There's layers. And so I think that the one thing that I would ask is that we not assume anything or presume anything. And the other thing is that there's a huge wealth of influences that we can draw from if we want to, right? Be it in the because culture can be in the language, can be like, I can't do it, but some people can. And there we understand the way people think, right? The way people feel. Those are nuances that people who speak the language and can work with the language can get at. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure the people present here will have more questions for you. Thank you for your contribution. My next questions are for Lydia. Again, Lydia, thank you for being with us today. My first question for you is, what role do community-based initiatives play in addressing the long-term effects of trauma among genocide against the Tutsi survivors, particularly those that are in the diaspora?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today. And I will ask Krista if she can help me to share some of my slides. I think she has the right to share. Okay. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. A moment. Okay, thank you for having us today, especially representing Beyond the Veil Mission team. It is a blessing always to be part of Humura's conversations. And we thank you for the work you continue to do in Canada, supporting the survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. And before I respond to the question, I would like to acknowledge, first acknowledging the work of Humura's Association. First, it's been, I believe, for the last 23 years, you have worked tirelessly to create a world free of genocide and other crimes against humanity through memory keeping, education, awareness raising, and advocacy. And the other important piece here is that this association was created by the genocide against the Tutsi survivors living in Ottawa, Gatineau region. And this is a great example in ways that we can continue to reclaim our history as a way of working together as a community to bring solutions to our needs, to our healing. And the other thing, I would like also to commend the work that you are doing to raise funds to build a permanent place of memory in the National Capital Region of Canada to commemorate the victim of the genocide against the Tutsi. This is a noble work, and Beyond the Veil team is looking forward to contributing to this noble work. So thank you so much. And also, I would like also to acknowledge the work of Lisa, Dr. Lisa Ndejuru. She's one of a kind approach that integrates storytelling. I know the moderator has introduced you so well, but we thank you for continuing to address personal and collective narratives and breaking the silence in order to heal and thrive for our communities. And I believe Dr. Patrick Rwagatare is not available, but we thank him for the work he continues to do in Rwanda for the genocide against the Tutsi survivors, and passing down knowledge through research and training the future practitioners. I am just, starting to acknowledge all these pieces because collaboration towards finding solutions to the needs of our communities, to the healing of our communities. So it is important that we come together, we collaborate, we acknowledge existing resources that we have so we can be able to guide our community to the right resources. And also acknowledging the work of Kizito. Kizito is one of our community leaders. He has been advocating for the last few years on affordable housing. We know how housing now in Canada is a huge, huge challenge for many people, including the survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. And he has made history working from Toronto to Ottawa. I guess all of you heard that, to raise awareness on PTSD. So I wanted to acknowledge the work not only of my fellow panelists, but also the importance of collaboration and recognizing the existing resources. So, and also on behalf of Beyond the Veil team, we exist to provide cultural appropriate mental health resources to the Rwandans, Afro-Black communities in Canada, and working with four core values of Beyond the Veil will be knowledge. People cannot have hope without awareness. And also with hope comes with to helping the community to see beyond the past traumatic event to support useful resources and treatment, reparation, how can we restore our communities' dignity and restoration. This is a journey. This is a journey to rebuild, heal, and it is possible through the support community-based, professional, and individual. And who we are, we stand our approach, or our 365 care approach. 365 first means that the healing work is a work of 365 days of the year. And I believe many survivors continue to advocate on this one. During the the Kwibuka event, we see more conversations, we see more gatherings, but then the rest of the year did slow down. But the need here is creating resources, creating this space for 365 days of the year for our community to access them. We are governed by the search model. Our search will stand for stories of survival and resilience. A survivor is at the center of our work. Educational for trauma survivors and their families, assistance for caregivers, resilience in action, hope for a future restoration. And our services include Get Beyond programming. This is more about our workshops, community engagement, education opportunities, mission to Rwanda. This is one area that we want to grow so much. When we talk about gaps in among practitioners, there's a lack of understanding history, and actually bringing people to our community, home to our country, can help people to understand better our history and where we are now. And also Isoko Wellness Program. This is more about retreat, therapy services, storytelling events. Last year, we were able to bring the community twice, and we saw a huge need in continuing creating these storytelling spaces for our community to open up and share their successes and challenges. Therapy services, Up to now, we have 2 therapists on our list of providers, and by the end of 2024, our goal is to increase up to 5, and I'm so grateful now to be part of that list. As of now, it's been a year and a few months practicing as a registered psychotherapist as well. So it would be my honor to work with my community on another level. So, okay, collaboration and partnership for Beyond the Veil, we are always open, and this is the community work. The healing work, it is a community work. We are open to different partnerships to improve our resources and contribute towards the healing of Rwandans and the Afro-Black communities in Canada. And here I am going to respond to your question. Thank you for being patient with me. And the question, maybe to repeat, since I went deeper into our organization, and I shared that because it is important that people know we are based in Ontario, more of the Toronto greater areas. However, Humura in Ottawa and other organizations in different part of the country, people knowing where we are, where to reach can be so helpful to know how to support our communities. So what the role do community-based initiatives play in addressing the long-term effects of trauma among genocide against the Tutsi survivors, particularly those in the diaspora? So my answer will consist maybe 2 short parts. I will provide a brief understanding, maybe people with us. I know so many people on this platform are knowledgeable. They have a great understanding on many things, but also the goal is to educate our community. Maybe what is the community-based initiatives? What do they stand for? And this particular answer would be addressed to community-based initiatives that are specifically responding to the need of the genocide against the Tutsi survivors. So community-based initiatives, to have a brief understanding, these are programs and interventions developed and implemented with the community to support survivors in their healing journey from the trauma of the genocide against the Tutsi. These initiatives have a goal to provide a culture-sensitive support to promote resilience, address the long-term impact of trauma on survivors, especially those in the diaspora. So what are the progress? Where are we now? Because most of the time when we meet, it's always something is missing. We are not doing something, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge the progress. This is why I even started commending the work of my fellow panelists and the work of Humura, because it is important to slow down to see what are the progress that have been made. So community-based initiatives have made significant strides in creating safe spaces for survivors to share their experiences, access social support, and engage in culture-relevant healing practices. And these initiatives have helped raise awareness about the unique challenges faced by the survivors in the diaspora and have fostered a sense of belonging and solidarity within the community. So the attendance might still be small, but at the same time, we know that there are many grassroots organizations, many communities being born here and there. And sometimes the question can be why people are creating different organizations. For me, it's okay. Many organizations we have, better and improved resources we can have for our community, and we can work together. So what are the gaps we have up to now? I think we still lack the accessibility and sustainability, and limited resources and funding. This pose a challenge to our long-term effectiveness. And as I said, greater collaboration and coordination among various community organizations are needed to ensure comprehensive and holistic support for survivors. And just to conclude in answering your question, what could be the future considerations to close these gaps while acknowledging our progress? I think future initiatives should focus on enhancing the scalability and reach of community-based program, and we can improve We can look into leveraging technology to provide virtual support services and conducting research to evaluate our impact on survivors' well-being. It is important that we continue to prioritize the survivors' empowerment in shaping and leading these initiatives to ensure that their unique needs and voices are heard in the healing process. So I think Dr. Lisa continued to say something we can assume, and I really love the approach in a way that anything we are creating for the community, specifically survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi, we can assume our work and what we're trying to do. We need to bring them at the table. We need to involve them in our research, in our project. We need to allow them to actually at some level lead this project because they understand and know their need well. And I think His Excellency Paul Kagame said something, the burden is on the survivors. We have put this burden of reconciliation on their shoulders. And when the moderator was asking a tip on how practitioners can improve their work, I also thought about the resilience of survivors in actually changing the services we are receiving in therapy room. Maybe it could be advocating for ourselves, because when we go there, our history is so important, and we can continue to advocate for ourselves in sharing our story, in sharing our needs in a way that is true to ourselves. Thank you. Thank you. I hope I was able to respond to the question.
So much. Yes, sorry. It got frozen for a little bit on my side. Thank you for taking the time. My second question is, how can mental health professionals integrate cultural approaches into the therapeutic interventions for Rwandan survivors?
Thank you so much. That is a great question. And I think many people like myself who are entering the field of healthcare or healing work, we are motivated to bring a positive change in terms of providing cultural approaches in our practices that can support the community we serve. And here particularly will be to the genocide against the Tutsi survivors. And also in responding to the question, I will go into 4 ways we can see this and make a progress. And so starting with understanding what it is the integration of culture approaches into our therapeutic interventions. This involves making sure that practitioners are incorporating the genocide against the Tutsi survivors' culture, beliefs, values, practices into our therapy process. And this approach must recognize the importance of cultural identity, heritage in healing from the trauma of the genocide against the Tutsi. And again, all the time I try to look into what are the progress that has been made in this area. Mental health practitioners, they continue. And I think also in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, it is important that especially people in the healing work, especially therapy healing work, it is important that they are educated and trained in adding cultural competence in their practice. So the progress is still, we have not yet reached where we need to be, but I've seen many practitioners at this point, they are very interested and they have started to include and to change their practices to make sure that they meet the need of the community they serve. However, we understand when it comes to our community, Rwandan community, and in particular the genocide against the Tutsi survivors, there's still so much work that needs to be done. But the progress here, they're trying to understand the significance of cultural competence when working with the survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. And one area practitioners are to consider is to make sure that we understand the difference between history and symptoms. We are not our symptoms. Survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi coming in this therapy room, we shouldn't see them as their symptoms. Understanding and considering their history, it is important in understanding how we can support them better. So the other progress I've noticed is different practitioners starting to integrate elements of Rwandan culture, such as storytelling, traditional healing practices, ritual and community support into the therapeutic interventions. And this integration has continued to help to build trust, establish rapport, and deepen the therapeutic relationship with survivors. For example, one of the programs that we started at Beyond the Veil include the storytelling, because by research, we see that narrative therapy has played a huge role in support the healing work of the survivors, and learning from other. The approach we used was created by Nanzelo. She's born from Zimbabwe and live and practice in South Africa. She has added an Afrocentric approach to the narrative therapy that includes a storytelling that is designed to help marginalized and racialized community. And we saw this approach really working and supporting our community, and we have included this in our program to give space to the survivors. One event we hosted last year, some of the feedback we got, many survivors were like, finally, I feel like, this is a space where I belong, because these programs, we designed them in a way that they target a particular group. We are not to bring everybody at the same time. We have to target a particular group, and having survivors only in this space, being able to open up, being able to understand that someone understands me without judging. Whatever I'm saying, there's somebody who can understand it on close to the same level as myself. We saw really a huge change, and we are looking forward to bring these storytelling programs to our communities across Canada and see more collaborations in many ways. And the gaps we keep seeing in terms of how practitioners or practitioners can improve their work will be training and acknowledging mental health professionals and acknowledge the cultural nuance and historical context of the genocide against the Tutsi. One work we do as well is the education of the genocide against the Tutsi, because how can you support people without understanding their history? This is so important. Repetition is so important as much as we can for people to understand. Language barriers as well is another limitation, limited to access to culture, competent care, stigma surrounding mental health within the Rwandan community. A good example, most of you can relate, wherever you go, when you say I'm Rwandan plus survivors, everybody want to sit close to you because they are ready to hear that trauma. So this can really make survivors feeling like, people are considering them as victims, and this stigmatization continue to really discourage the healing work in our community. And and I think future consideration, I think mental health professionals should focus on developing and participating in culture competency training programs to enhance the integration of culture approaches into therapeutic interventions for the genocide against the Tutsi survivors. Such programs should provide education on Rwandan history. This is something we have to advocate for wherever we go. In every room we stay, we stand in, Humura, RCHC, amazing doctors we have today. We have to make it a requirement, to equip professionals better to address the unique needs of survivors. When we see the work on Indigenous education, we see that many organizations, many programs now are seeking to educate themselves on Indigenous work. And this is something, again, unfortunately, as survivors, we really have to consider to advocate, to continue to raise awareness, so we see this knowledge, this education is in school, we see now schools have, especially Toronto District School Board, have started to include African studies in high schools. So we can have the education against the Tutsi as well in different schools. And we see that in Montreal as well. They do that work, Page Rwanda. So that's a good thing. Collaborating with community leaders, culture experts, and survivors can help mental health professionals gain deeper insight into culture-appropriate therapeutic techniques. And finally, again, future considerations should aim to evaluate the effectiveness of culture-integrated interventions and explore innovative ways to tailor therapy to the specific cultural identities and experiences of Rwandan survivors. And finally, prioritizing culture sensitivity, inclusivity in therapeutic practices, mental health professionals can create more meaningful and effective healing experiences for survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. So I said a lot of things, but honestly, education, awareness is something that we need to do. And also where we see the gap as the community, instead of hoping that, oh, Humura is not doing right, Beyond the Veil should be doing this. If we see the gap, how are we joining to creating solutions that are appropriate for ourselves? You know, unfortunately, the huge work continued to remain on survivors and the existing organization. How can we support to release the burden, especially in fundraising, in maybe providing different resources so the survivors do not have to carry that burden alone. So thank you so much.
It was very informative, and thank you for the presentation. It's always helpful for people to be reading as they're listening. So thank you for thinking about that. And I actually appreciate that you gave a way to contact you, and I would like to ask before we continue, Dr. Lisa, si vous pouvez aussi donner, je ne sais pas comment on peut vous joindre, s'il y a un membre de la communauté qui aimerait vous parler ou vous joindre, si vous pouvez aider, comment on pourrait entrer en contact avec vous, et puis nous allons continuer avec Monsieur Kizito. Et je vois que vous avez mis vos courriels dans le chat. Parfait, merci beaucoup. D'accord. The next questions will be for Monsieur Kizito. What do you think mental health challenges do genocide survivors living abroad face compared to those who remain in their home country?
First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank Humura, and I want to thank everybody for being with us, and then definitely for creating this space for these kind of conversations. I agree with the other colleagues on this panel about having more of these conversations beyond the commemoration and the equivocal period. I think it's important. I think I come into this mostly through personal experience. I obviously also I'm doing work, and I'll say it's more on the innovation side to figure out how to provide solutions to mental health, trauma, and PTSD to our people, but from a different angle. Of course, clinical work is important, but also how else can we provide the support to people who are going through these traumas that is more holistic, natural, and definitely cultural. I like to say to people, I was 11 years old during the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. I lived through it, and I did not start working on myself, on my healing, until I was 30 years old. So that tells you, and this is lucky because those of you who know my story, you know, I took about 3 years of considering suicide. So throughout that time, I would not have made it if I didn't find ways to actually break through, whether it was through learning about my history, going through various health approaches, mainly holistic health, and also just connecting with the people. But I would say the first and foremost thing that helped me was sharing the story. Like, to me, it all begins by storytelling and sharing your story and finding the people that you trust to be able to share those stories with. It was that point that allowed me to kind of start breaking through. So to answer your question, and I think there's so many challenges There are so many challenges for those in the diaspora. And I didn't discover that until I actually went back home. But, you know, you could start with the lack of opportunities for survivors to confine with one another. You know, I think if there was this kind of conversations for private and public, for survivors, and not just survivors, but everyone else who is going through the trauma and PTSD and other challenges that are related to mental health, creating opportunities for those folks to be able to come together, whether it's a bi-weekly, bi-monthly, it would really help. I think that the lack of opportunity, of course, being that we are all scattered. And it's not just that we're scattered in different cities. Even within the cities that we live in, we're very scattered. There is no place for us to meet. There is no, like, as far as I know, there is no one community within the Rwandan community here in Canada that has like a community hub or a community center where people can just walk in. So I think that lack of having a place to call home in these diaspora spaces is a huge challenge for our folks. And I would say the other is lack of self-time. I say that self-time, self-moment, just time to work on ourselves. In 2012, I was lucky to have that time to actually start working on myself. It took, I think, I was off work for like a year or two, and that's because I had a car accident, and that was the opportunity I got to be able to actually start looking into all of the trauma that I was facing with, and the fact that I was considering suicide. And through that, I was able to actually begin working on a plan both for myself, but also some of the work that I've been working with the community to deliver. So it's, how do we create time? How do we create time for our people here? Because the reason why I say that is because I think in Rwanda, you are surrounded by people. There are programs. There are many ways for people in Rwanda, survivors in Rwanda, to actually connect and find a way to share and to build one another. In diaspora, we need to create that kind of opportunity as well. So, for example, and this is our inaugural project that we launched called Ali Kebland. Initially, we invited young people who are looking to find their purpose, but the intent for that program was to help people find themselves. And that is to say, you take your time, you take time off, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year. And right now we're working on ways to create a program that actually is able to support you to take 6 months to a year. You can be somewhere and it's going to be a retreat where you can actually, we can find a way to support the family so you can actually focus on yourself. We haven't managed to actually acquire funds for that, but we're working on it. And we hope to collaborate with folks to get that done. But we believe that's a key. It's a key to actually get people to actually think about what we've gone through. And the reason why I'm saying that is a lot of us, and including myself. So my mother is a survivor. We've lost so many people on my mother's side. One of the examples I want to give is, so just this week alone, my family is looking to move my uncle where he was to a more appropriate space because where he was, it wasn't the proper place where he was put in, during after the genocide against the Tutsis. My cousins, I think, like we've lost, we have like 8 cousins on one of my other uncle that we never knew where they went. To this day, we hope. That's a hope right now, that sometimes we're like, oh, maybe they could just pop up out of nowhere and we'll be able to see them again. And so not being able, and so sometimes people in Rwanda who are living in Rwanda, even though they are all living through these challenges, and I'm talking about survivors, some of them are able to see that through their friends and their other families, and they can start to understand that's the reality. But here in diaspora, there is not that much opportunity to be able to actually deal with those realities. So when you actually are able to have that moment, that self-time to deal with those challenges and to understand that maybe that's just how it is and we'll never be able to actually see these people, how do we now move forward? I think creating that space for people in diaspora is crucial. I believe it's crucial. And it's not just for the survivors, it's for their descendants. It's for the community as a whole. Because without this piece, healing fully is going to be challenging for most of our folks. So I would say that definitely having the place, like creating a place for our people to come together. So kind of trying to kind of bridge that scatteredness that exists, creating opportunity for folks to have self-time. And I say 6 months, nothing less, because anything less, you're just gonna go back into the reality that you're in, and then bringing the finding a way for people to actually either say goodbye, even if they will never know how and where to find their loved ones. But how do you get to say goodbye? I think it's through these conversations. I say this because I honestly did not start my healing journey until I was 30 years old. This is when I started taking journals. This is when I sat down and wrote, and I could speak to my father, who was not there. My father passed away in 97, but I was able to speak to him spiritually. So talk about what Dr. Ndejuru talked about. My spiritual journey is different now. You know, I born Catholic, became born again. I was a Muslim for a bit. I kind of look at myself now as just a spiritual individual, and I'm able to do some of those things that our ancestors used to do, including being able to speak to somebody who is not there, which is some of the work that I did that helped me to really be able to recover from my trauma. Does that mean my trauma is gone? Once you have it, it's usually, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to speak to that, but I believe it's always going to be there. I just think that you have to find a way to use it as a fuel, as a tool to support you in the work that you're going to do. So I think there is so many challenges, but to me, that is the core piece. How do we bring our people together? And I would say that some of the work that we are doing at the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center is aimed to solving some of that. Lydia talked about some of the work that we're doing around affordable housing. If you know about our project, it's not about just putting units out there. It's creating a village. We want it to be a village of supportive wraparound services that people can access. The core piece for our project is the healing center. As you all know, we came into this talking about building a healing center for the Rwandan community. That is still the goal, and it's through the affordable housing that we're going to achieve it. We hope to deliver it in Toronto, but also working with other groups in other cities, Homura, in Ottawa, and others in Calgary and so forth, who would love to come to you and do the same thing. Build not just the healing center, but also build a village that we can say it's the African village or it's the Rwandan village in Ottawa, in Montreal. Montreal is my hometown. I actually came to Canada through Montreal. So that holds a dear place for me. And we'd love to do that there and actually bring our people, create a place for them to go Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. And you just know you can walk there and meet with people, both clinicians, but also we believe this is where I come in again, because I'm coming in as this is for me a personal experience that brought me to this table in terms of talking about healing, but also in the community, by the way, because I was not a member of the community before this. Is how do we create a space for people to feel comfortable to talk about some of the challenges, and for me that was the opening, and I believe it's the piece that has to be there. How do we create safe spaces for communities? We actually, as an organization, we did that last year. We created a program called Safe Space. I'm going to be sharing with you maybe on a follow-up, but we're also opening a community hub in July in Toronto, and we hope to continue to build that space for communities to come and use the space anytime they want. And eventually, of course, that would lead into that infrastructure that we want to create for the people. So we can at least emulate some of the work that the community in Rwanda has done to build, to heal, to rebuild. Obviously, I went to Rwanda when I was I went to Rwanda in 2016. I had not been there since I left in 96, 97. And what I saw there made me believe that we needed to do more in diaspora. We need to do more. And every time I go to Rwanda, I've gone now every other year. Every time I go there, I'm convinced that we need to do more in diaspora to catch up to what the country in Rwanda is doing, because we have a community here. I saw somebody talk about we need to speak in Kinyarwanda, but unfortunately, most of our young people don't speak in Rwanda, so we need to speak to them. Mm-hmm. And that's why sometimes when we have these conferences, we speak in the language that they understand, because they are also going through the same challenges. These are descendants of the survivors who need to hear, who need to be a part of these conversations. And we need to build this community. We need to, not everything we do is going to be to the continent. There is also a work that needs to be done in diaspora to support the Rwandans that are in diaspora. And that to me is important. And that's how we get to even build further for the Rwandan community on the continent.
Thank you so much. My other question for you is, how can mental health professionals collaborate with the community leaders, organizations, and policymakers to improve access to culturally sensitive mental health services for genocide survivors?
That is an important question. I think I've had various discussions with some of the folks on this panel, but also some of the leaders of Humura. And I would really love for us to come together and create something that is national. We are doing various initiatives right now. The Rwandan Canadian Healing Center, for example, we've been responding to the asylum seeker challenge. Some of you might know we had asylum seekers, most of them who are African, who are sleeping on the streets here in Toronto. And my organization was the lead to advocate for them to actually get supported. What we're doing now with the groups that stepped up is we're creating a coalition. So when we go to the government, the municipalities across the region, we go as one voice. So we are doing that. I know that there's other groups in the Calgary that have formed a coalition. That these are groups that are not just creating coalitions, but are funded and are doing work to support their communities. And that's what we look to do with partnership with some of the foundations in Canada. We are doing work also around housing the same way, collaboratively. So I think what we need to do, and what I think the professionals in the mental health space need to do to support survivors is to come together. You know, we know we have Humura, we have Part of Rwanda, we have Memory Keepers, we have Ibuka now that is here in Toronto, but it's national. You know, we have Beyond the Veil and others. What stops us from coming together and forming a network? Because when you're speaking, you're not just speaking, when you're speaking to governments as one voice, you're not just speaking for folks in Toronto, you're speaking for folks in Quebec, for folks in the West.
Right.
And I think we need to get to engage in that kind of work that is collaborative, that is formed with the support of everybody from different angles, and we can all push behind the scene to actually get some of the call to action that we're looking for. So I call on all of our leaders, especially the ones that are leading the organizations that support and serve genocide survivors, because if we do it individually, we get somewhere, but if we do it together, we get further. And then I'd like to second what His Excellency said a few days ago. It's not just coming together to go far, or to, you know, like the saying of going alone you can go far, but or going alone you can go fast, but coming together we can go far. I think we can do both, and we can move alone, or we can also move collectively. So I would definitely ask that we do that, because that would help to bring about the real change and build this infrastructure for us, for our organizations to support the survivors. And again, I always like to emphasize, not just the survivors, it's the future. It's the descendants that are going to come and also have to deal with this reality. You know, I just shared some of the stories about my personal family and my personal challenges. I'm sure my children are going to have those questions. And who is going to be there if I'm not there? What about their children? And that's where we need to build infrastructure, strong infrastructures here in diaspora, because I know in Rwanda a lot of that's being done. And of course, we will support any work that can go to support that push. But the work to me that is urgent is the work in diaspora, because a lot of our people are busy work. Obviously, you know, the challenge with the socioeconomic challenges that are here, how would we step in and support them here in diaspora is important. So I'm definitely in it for that collaboration, and I'm happy to be one of the folks that can help to bring about that, because we have agencies that I believe that are available to support the work, including one that we work with every day. It's the Network for the Advancement for Black Communities. They're incredible at the system change work. And I think that's what is needed. You know, coming together, doing retreats, actually talking about everything that is needed, building a strategy for 5, 10, 50 years in order to build this infrastructure for the future generation.
Thank you so much. We had some really key things in this discussion, and I think before we, I would like to invite everybody to start preparing their questions for our panelists, but I would like to invite each one of you to give kind of like the big takeaways for this discussion that we had. If we were to forget everything that was said here in this afternoon, what are the key things that each person should take home and that we can build on? And I will start by Dr. Lisa.
So to me, speaking to the things that I was speaking about, I was asked, what are the things that mental health professionals that are not Rwandan can do to offer culturally sensitive. So what that means for me is, what we could do is to, as an organization, as community organizations, we can offer education about the situation. But what we also have to do absolutely is to make sure to tell them that even though the violence is something that touched so many people, each experience of it is unique. And so we have to be extra careful to listen to the individual in front of us, where they're at, what they're coming for, and what they want to achieve by coming, and they have to put their knowledge in service of the person that is in front of them so that they can serve them. And they have to be humble enough to understand to know what they don't know, and to be okay with not knowing. So they have to get information on one hand, but they also have to be okay, because sometimes when people don't know something, they can defend themselves, right? Like people can get, and what we don't want is to be at the effect of more aggression. If the person doesn't know, then they should be okay with that and be able to tell that to their client and say, listen, there are things that I'm not going to know and I'm going to ask. So I'm thinking about like psychotherapy, for example, in the private sector it's pretty expensive, right? Like if I'm going to a psychotherapist and I have to teach them to understand me, there's something about that is, even financially, like it's not fair, right? Like there's something. And then so this is something that I'm thinking, I'm thinking, I don't know that I've ever seen it, but if it were fair, then we should be able to ask, or we could ask them, we could, as organizations, we could propose, listen, if you don't know, are you willing to take like a 20%, a 25% off, a 30% off to acknowledge the time that you need to learn about this universe, to learn about those circumstances, to get more familiar with this, to get more into your own comfort zone. Like you're learning, can you put something in there for I would find that really fair. But I haven't ever seen that. It's something that we could propose as a community. We could say, listen, we could maybe also, as a community, we could maybe have a number of people, right? Like a number of practitioners that we know as community, that we have vetted as a community organization for our people. We could do that, right? We could gather people on the outside and say, listen, our people would like to see some professionals, and then sort of have a how can I say that? Like have a network of people that are, of practitioners, of clinicians that are ready to go, and that we could even maybe train, right? I think Beyond the Veil was doing some of that, right? we've also done some of that for community care practitioners, but not for specifically for the genocide, right? The other thing that I was thinking about, and I think it always comes down to that, is to please, if I'm speaking to a professional, I would ask to please look at the person as a whole person, with before, during, and after. To not collapse everything, to not conflate the person with the event, right? We are not that. We are more, right? Like, to focus on the uniqueness of experience, right? And I also in the same way, if we're talking about spiritual and cultural practices, there are lots of, like, do you remember Dr. Nasson wrote a small book about his work, right? And he was talking about he was talking about language. He was talking about language and meaning, right? Like, when he would speak to people, they would tell him about these things, and he would reflect on the meaning, and he would go through sort of what these meanings and associations to the meanings culturally. But that means that the person has a huge cultural baggage of associations that they can pull from, right? We might not have that, right? I don't have that in terms of the language, but we can listen to someone, and we can be really close and careful in our listening, so that we understand where the person is coming from, right? So be it for spiritual practice, we cannot make any on peut pas faire des présumés, hein? We can't presume to know. We have to find out. Yeah, I think that those were the things that I'm really excited about the idea of working together. I'm really excited about the idea of there was a question in the chat about wanting to hear how survivors in the community have been able to overcome the trauma, become forgivers, and then self-development and participants in rebuilding, right? It's a huge question. People are already contributing, right? Whether they have dealt with their trauma or not, people are already in there, they're doing things. Being lovers of life is not a constant, right? Like, it's not because we're getting better that we're always well, right? Like, for example, let's say I'm getting better. Well, I'm not in that situation, but let's say people are getting better, and then in April, let's say there's and then it goes down again. Or maybe during, let's say, someone has a first child and they've lost their parents, and so there are these meaningful moments. So it's not like this. It doesn't go like this. Healing is not like that, right? And I want also people to understand that first we have to know what we're solving for, right? So individually, like, what would a good outcome of a work look like? What would that look like for you, right? There are people. Anyways, I'm not gonna. I feel as though I get started, and then I want to blah, 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 but
no, it's okay. Go ahead. It's
I
go ahead.
There are survivors. When I read the question, I feel as though there are so many things, so many amazing things that are driven by our survivors, right? Like, they make incredible contributions already, and this thing today is an association, is driven by an association of survivors. They hold something that nobody else in the community holds, right? Like there, I don't know how to say this. There are a lot of, on the one hand, there, in that question I read like an impatience, right? We should be done with it or something. That there should be like, when are people going to be done with it? When are people going to, you know, move to another chapter? And I think that it's there is no timeline for it. What happened was, how are you going to describe it? Who's going to say to someone, yeah, you should be done? That's not how that works. Everybody has to make their way through it in their own time, at their own pace. It doesn't, we can't presume to know what things meant to people. And there are people who are you can do your work, do your inner work, and you're contributing, and you're loving people, and you're raising children, and you're going to work. I think those are the things, when Kizito is talking about time, I think that is something that is hugely understood, right? It's a lot to ask someone to open up this kind of, that kind of space, and then still have to do all the other things, right? So it's a you do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and every time you're working, you have to integrate it into your life, integrate it into your life, integrate it into your life, and then things happen that question what you do. And then, I'm not saying that it's impossible. Au contraire, I think that the beautiful thing is that you don't have to be done, right? Nobody is done, whether you have survived a genocide or not. Nobody's, like, people are not done. That's not a thing. But I think that doing the work, when you're in a direction towards hope, towards life, towards living, I think it can be good for the person. Not easy, but good. Good because they become hopefully more available to taste what is good in life, but we can't force anybody to do that. There's so many people are so connected to other people. Maybe when we ask people, what holds you back? Sometimes it's because, like, if I were to feel better, what about all these other people, these other people that I'm connected to who are still feeling bad? Am I then losing them too? Like, there are you have to, if things are not, if it's difficult to move forward, there's a reason. So we have to be really, really careful in listening to what that is. And I think that there are lots and lots and lots of moments, and lots of, there's a lot of life and a lot of loving of life happening in I'm not taking away the challenges. There are a lot of challenges, but there are also not only challenges, right? There's also a lot of strengths. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup. My takeaways, what I thought was really, what struck me was the understanding to not limit people to just the genocide, because there is the person they were before, and their experiences before, as well as the person they are after and their experiences after, and the person has to be taken as a whole. And I think it's something that is very much missed, even not only with practitioners, but even as experiences in abroad, because as soon as you say you're Rwandan, and the first thing that people know is that there's a genocide that happened, it is, oh, were you there during the war? And like it's you are just reduced to that experience, and maybe you don't want to talk to a stranger about it. Maybe you don't want to start delving into your trauma with a person that you just met 2 seconds ago. So I thought that was very...
Or even people believe that you're more fragile than you are. For example, if you're in a situation, a workplace situation, right, there's a conflict, and people think, okay, oh, you're affected by that, so who knows how you're interpreting things,
right?
And it's like,
right.
really, I did that, so like, or you're in a situation where you are struggling, let's say, with a partner, or about raising a child, for example, or in a comment on appelle ça, when parenting, like let's say you're divorced and you're negotiating
la garde des enfants.
Oui, c'est ça. Et puis quelqu'un dit,
la garde partagée.
Oui, la garde partagée. Et quelqu'un dit, mais est-ce que aren't you sort of somehow more fragile? And it's like, that's terrible, right? Like, so then you have to be careful not to make yourself too vulnerable for somebody to take advantage of it, right? So right. I find that those are the things where we have to, and then you have to also believe it, because sometimes if somebody tells you that, you're like, okay, do I take that on, or do I push back, right? Because I mean, if I made it here, I think I'm strong enough. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, come, give me the, like, I made it here, right? Should be proof of something, right? So I think that there are a lot of the word is so big that it leaves room for a lot of interpretations that we have to be really careful of. One, we have to make sure that we're always, like, they're as protected as possible, right? Like that that our survivors are as like all this advocacy, etc., is really important. And then sort of when it's time to, when people actually are ready to go through the work, right? Like, even when people, like, I work a lot with trauma, and let's say the trauma is the thing here, let's say, you spend a lot of time going, because you've survived by not moving this around too much, right? You don't know what it's going to be like going to it. Like, is it going to explode your whole life, right? There's a lot of fear in this, right? And so if, let's say, somebody says, okay, let's do this thing, right? To have the time to do it, to have the, at their own pace, right? Yeah, and to see what, to them, what would it mean that what would feeling better mean to the person, nobody else, to the person, right? Yeah.
Right. And I also think it was the last thing that you said about how people might feel, if I feel better, how about the people around me that are still not feeling better? And just, it made me think of also the survivor's guilt. And you may think that letting go of that trauma, it's like letting go of the pain is like, it doesn't affect you anymore, or you're not sad that you lost everybody that you lost anymore, because it doesn't hurt as much anymore. And I think it's a really big takeaway for survivors and for everybody living after to take away. So thank you very much, Dr. Ndejuru. I have a question for you, Lydia. Just a kind of a follow-up question. How did the perception about mental health evolve for survivors in your experience?
That's an interesting question. And I also have a question to Dr. Lisa Ndejuru. So I think it's going to be interesting.
We can pass it around.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at some point these conversations are so important that the survivor remain the center of the conversation. And myself, I'm a survivor, 6 years old. Most of the time for the past few years, I was telling my story, but now I'm in this space more often to talk about the healing work. And it's a different approach, but at the same time, I think Kizito is someone who touched on really bringing our lived experiences in this space, and it's so important. Um, I had a question. I hope Dr. Ndejuru keep it before I continue. One is, when we talk about the healing work, healing is a privilege. And often when you speak to people, especially not only my lived experiences, the reality of many survivors is that this is a privilege, and sometimes we cannot afford. When you're giving an example of the healing work on trauma, you were showing how like trying to touch the trauma areas, can be so scary, can be, oh my God, am I ready? If I touch this, what's gonna happen? So, and sometimes most of us, now I'm gonna remove the cap of a psychotherapist, I'm a survivor. Most of us, it looks like if I go this road, I'm not gonna afford to care for my children. I'm not gonna afford to go to work. I'm not gonna afford to study. And my tomorrow, and many people, especially survivors who are responsible of their family members, example of survivors who became children survivors who became parents to their own siblings. It could be, if I start taking care of myself, who's gonna care for the other person? Yes, for sure, we understand the consequences, or if you don't do this along the way, this will happen. But at the same time, the luxury to slow down and heal, we don't have that. And I really wanted Dr. Ndejuru to touch base on that, especially for many years of working with trauma clients. How do we go with that? Because somebody can tell you, I'm here, I'm succeeding in many areas, but at the same time, I know I need to go to therapy. I know this is needed, but I know how it's going to mess me up. And I'm not ready for that. And for me, I understand on many levels, especially with trauma, comes with many of survivors really have experienced what we call dissociation in ways that there's what our mind understands, that get used to the comfort of that pain because it's the way our brain tries to help us to survive in the moment, but our body feel every single day the pain and the pressure. So we want to heal, we want to move on, but that dissociation where there's the comfort here, the connection between the two requires a huge long work. So I'm gonna need Dr. Ndejuru to talk based on that one, but at the same time, the question you brought to me, I think honestly speaking, the reality of survivors is so complex, and I think most of the people really touch base on that. Let's not assume, let's really speak to the survivors. Let's invite them. When we see many events that we do, they're penalty-centered, politician-centered. What is the survivor in the conversation? Somebody, I think Ndejuru also said that when we speak about people, how people are contributing, people are already contributing. The existence of a survivor is actually 60% of the contribution we need when it comes to even fighting genocide. Denials ideologies is the main tool that we need. Their existence, their survivor, your existence is a contribution enough. They should even be paid to just sit in these conferences because their existence is enough.
Right.
We don't need to go there and talk about their trauma, what happened. Just because they survived, it's what we need, and that's it. And those who find the courage and the grace and the strength to do the work, healing work, somebody said, how the people who survived find the strength to heal and move forward. Healing work can look like my life. 6 years old, years ago, I was standing in front of people talking how I saw my parent being murdered in front of my eyes. And years later, now I'm in this space in therapy room. Even on April 10th, that's when they killed my parent. I had 3 clients scheduled on that day in therapy. And instead, I was able to shift my focus to, I should be home mourning, but I am so grateful that on this day, I am able to share healing work with other people that need it. Does that mean that my trauma is gone? I doubt that. Does that mean that I am better? Even beyond the veil, we adopted this different terminology. We don't like to use healing work because healing is a journey. And when the Western culture talk about healing, it's like a promise work. Well, if you come to therapy, you take this medication, you're gonna get healed and move forward. But we talk about restoration. We talk about reparation of our dignity. We talk about, restoration. I cannot heal completely to get back to who I used to be, but restoration sounds like, with the tree of life narrative therapy using our approach, we help people to move on hand in hand. My trauma here, my success here. We walk together. It's okay. And it's okay. When we look at the Black community, the reason why we are even collaborating, Dr. Ndejuru said in the chat, the collaboration with the Black community is so important because we continue to live these traumatic experiences. It does not stop. Even me, when people invite me to talk about my trauma, I don't want to talk about my parent that got killed. I want to talk about the trauma that I lived after the genocide. That's the biggest trauma that I lived. So, but when we meet survivors, like, oh, tell us how they shoot you. Tell us how this. Oh, I want to talk about those days I couldn't eat. Those days that, it's a lot. So when survivors were together, these are things we talk about. Can we bring back this night of Kwibuka where really survivors sit all the night, talk about it? It's not about re-traumatizing people. It's actually even empowering people in a way that you can tell the story in your own way. So healing work, honestly, what I tell my fellow survivors is that I don't think there is a way, there's nothing that can replace or change what we lived. There's not amount of therapy can really fill your soul, but at the same time, we have the resilience. No matter what, even if you doubt it, it is there. The proof is that you are still here. That's the only proof you need. So when you go through that healing work, even if you cannot access it, understanding that one, you are know your symptoms, because we see that the scaling data, everything, it's all about our symptoms. There is our story. There are people that understand you, and it's okay. I can move on with life, with my past and maybe my current circumstances that are not pretty, and I can continue to live my life. I have the right to define it in a way that I want. I tell people there is this example I use a lot in processing thought and emotions, where you see your life as a driver. You have a bus and you are the driver. And in your bus, there are seats. Who's sitting on those seats? It can be so many things. My trauma, my failures, all these people are with me. If I sit here and keep looking back, trying to deal with them, I'm going to be stuck. But what I tell them, yeah, you are here, we are together, but I keep moving. I keep moving. I know it's another form of survival mode, but at the same time, for many survivors, this goes back to the question that I want Dr. Ndejuru to help us. We cannot afford the luxury to slow down and heal. I remember one time I had this client who has lost their children. I was a family lost their children on suicide, and they were telling me how they took 2 years off to grieve. I was triggered. It is sad, but I was triggered in a way that, oh, I wish I can have 1 week to grieve. Maybe I was sad for them, but I was also, oh my God, people can actually take 2 years. I know even 2 years is not enough, but that reminded me, but at the same time, for sure, I have to check myself. But those are things that are reminders, or telling survivors, go to therapy. If I send you a list of 10 survivors, you're not going to find where to send them to therapy. It's a privilege. It's expensive. So, but at the same time, healing, when we talk about healing, we have to look beyond this capitalism approach. We have to look what we have available, how we empower one another, the presence of survivors in this conference, in our lives, not assuming, not really asking questions, allowing them, Dr. Ndejuru also said, healing at their own pace. That's okay, but also bring me back as the end, healing at my own pace, but at the same time, there is the fear. My pace requires me not to stay a little bit longer because I have to move on in order to survive. How would you approach that area? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do you want me to go?
Yes, please.
So when you said healing is a privilege, I thought there's so many ways in which we could understand that. Yeah, we could say, like, why is it a privilege? Is it a privilege because of the cost of therapy? And then are we saying that therapy is the only way to heal? It's not, right? What does healing? I think that we have to go back to the specificity, right? Of what. So I liked when you said we don't talk about healing, because healing is an ableist idea, right? There's this idea that at one point you're done, right? And I'm not sure that at one point we're living, right? We're not done until we're not living anymore. But I think that there are times when living is so painful, yeah. And what if it doesn't have to be that painful? What if there are ways to ease, to care for that? What if there are? And then the question is, I can't slow down. I think that the question is more like, when somebody says, okay, we took 2 years to grieve, and I'm thinking, that's interesting. What happened after the 2 years, right? Like, so we can't take 2 years. What can we do, right? Like, what can we do in our own experience, like in our own life, for our own selves? What is possible? Is it possible to take, I don't know, an afternoon or an afternoon and evening every, I don't know, quarter, every 3 months, every 6 months, right? Take a weekend, let's say, where we go in and out. Is it like a practice that we do, from time, not daily because it's not like so rigid, but from time to time, it's something where there's a thread, and then we keep looking at it, because healing is specific. I mean, I work with healing because that it's the most available thing to me. I'm thinking about first, what is it that we're trying to reach, right? And then we come back, and what is now? And I think the important thing is to be able to open and close, so that, is it closed enough for me to be able to continue working, right? So the idea of titration, they call it, right? You don't like, it comes from the chemical world, right? When you put like one solution into another, right? Rather than like, I pour something into and then you pour like a couple of drops, and then you mix a couple of drops, and then you mix, so that how much of the open can you bear, that it doesn't bouleverser, how do you say bouleverser? That it doesn't completely overwhelm your system, right? And so the idea is that it's a very careful, when you start when you go, I mean, if I'm thinking about in a therapeutic setting, for example, it might be about asking for, can we have a very clear opening and a very clear closing, right? So that I don't want this to be like leaking all over my life. I want to be able to think about it, but I don't want to feel like I'm open and bleeding all until I see you again, right? So in terms of the clinical piece, there are ways to care for what is happening, right? Let's say if it's like a retreat thing, are we sort of considering how it could feel when it doesn't hurt as much to be able to move forward with other areas of our life? Yeah, that's the idea, right? The idea is to say, like, sometimes you have a wound and it's live, and sometimes you have a cicatrice. It's the wound was there, you can show for it, but you move, right? It's no longer active. And I think that is what you want. And you don't want it to be something, because trauma is sort of like not metabolized, right? So you have it, it's almost like c'est comme avoir un peu des mines antipersonnelles, like memory sort of. And then when you walk around and you get triggered, right? Something triggers it, boom, it explodes in your life, right? Time, space, everything goes, boom, right? What you want is to be able to deactivate those, so that you're not as sensitive to things that are coming at you, right? I don't know if I answered any of, like, when you said I can't afford it, the idea is to say, I think the idea is, in some ways, yes, and then in some ways, what can we afford? If we cannot afford the thing, what can we afford? And let's start there, because it's just starting, being in the direction of something. You don't have to have arrived. You're just in the process, and that is going to give you so much more energy, rather than holding it together, because holding it together is costing a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy that you're pushing that is helping you get by. You're getting by, but this is costly. We don't see it, right? Well, sometimes you don't, but you feel it.
Thank you so much. I'd like to go to Kizito now. I'd like you to also answer this question, though, to give your input to the conversation that we were having. I know I could see from the chat that you also have a lot to contribute. And I think what we're talking about, the luxury of what it would take to take time off, especially abroad, that's where the work that RCHC is trying to do to help people get away for a little. That would be, that sounds almost like a dream. I hope that we'll be able to achieve that and help the community that way. So if you could also contribute to that, and I have also a question to add to that after you respond to that, is how do you, what do you think displacement, let's say, how does immigration or displacement affect the healing process in your experience? The floor is yours.
Maybe I'll start with that. I definitely have a lot to add to what Dr. Ndejuru and Lydia had shared, and I think it's important to have this conversation about, that privilege piece. I do agree on that. But so I think what it does is it adds to the trauma. I think a lot of what we're working with in the Western society, until we are able to socioeconomically, until we have the right environment, we are still just kind of coping. We are surviving, and so the displacement, especially when you're coming to the diaspora and our communities are not strong enough to kind of take care of you, all these things are doing is adding to the trauma that's already there. So I would definitely say that, going back to what I shared previously, I think those of us in diaspora, I always ask these questions to people, especially young people, and it takes a long time to decide where you want to be. It's only recently that I've decided that I want to be in Canada. My work is in Canada. I always thought I'm going to go back to Rwanda, I'm going to set up my home there, but only recently I've decided that my work is going to be in Canada. That means everything I do is to support the work of African folks, especially Rwandans, within Canada. I think once you make that decision, or when you make the decision about whether you eventually going to go back to the continent, it's easier for also to decide what you want to do, what you're going to do. So I think making sure that we develop these systems, these villages, to accept and bring people in and support them is important, because if a lot of other communities, the Ukrainians and others, are coming in, and there's the communities there that are supporting them. We as Africans don't have that. We are all trying to survive in our own areas. And I think creating those villages, those communities, those infrastructures is crucial to the future of our nation, both here and in Rwanda. I talked about, Dr. Ndejuru talked about what triggers people. This might be funny, but seeing a Rwandan triggered me for a long time. Like between the time I left Rwanda and the time I actually came back to the community, I could count how many Rwandans that I had as my friends. I was not a part of any community. I just could not stand being able to, like, Rwandans triggered me. The only Rwandans that I was talking to were either my siblings or the friends of my siblings. So what allowed me to get back to being a part of the community and doing the work that I'm doing now, right? That is involved, that is definitely integrating. All of my work is either connected to or set to support the Rwandan community. It's because of the journey that I took, and all of us are going to go through different, like, our journeys are different, and I think the key word I would take away is holistic, right? If you are coming from, if you've lived the journey that I've lived, the way I came to healing was different. It actually started by embracing the Black community and doing research within the Black community. And then that connected me to the African history. And I was able to see a beautiful history that then took me to the Rwandan community. Without that Black history, that I was in deep. I did the research. That's why I said it took a long time. And I was one of those people that took a long time off work to do the work on myself. But that meant doing a lot of research, reading a lot of books. And then eventually that led me to the Rwandan community, because there is something there that connected me to the history of Rwanda historically. And I'm talking about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago. And that's how I became a member of the Rwandan community. But if I followed the tradition of, I have to see a clinician, you know what they were telling me throughout this whole period I was trying to commit suicide? I'm like, we need to scan my brain. And they'll be like, no, your brain is fine. You need to stop. You're fine. So I'm like, okay, if I'm fine, my brain is fine. Why am I feeling this terrible? Because I grew up feeling much like I was never this miserable. I didn't have anxieties. I was blowing up every week, not every week, every day. So I've shared this story before. It's very sensitive, but I could not have a meal without throwing up. So, and this is anybody, including my own siblings. If they were like, let's go eat together, I would first have to go to the washroom and throw up, and I'll come back with red eyes, and everybody would think I was high on weed or something. So I was blowing up because I had so much internally that I couldn't share. I didn't have the opportunity to release. That's why I believe in the story sharing, because once you start sharing it, oh man, it's amazing what happens to your life, at least for me, my journey, right? So I believe it has to be holistic. It could be clinical, definitely, but it could also be having this space for people to engage, to share. So whether it's the village, if it's a safe space, whatever you want to call it, everybody is going to have their own journey. And I think those of us that are, like, for me, what I can do is just provide that space, or at least through my work, provide that space. And then people like Lisa can come in and work with these individuals one-on-one. People like Lydia can come and work with these individuals one-on-one. That's not my background, it's not my experience, but at least I can provide that space. So I think we have to create that space for people to be able to heal. So when I say take 6 months, it's so people can actually see the reality of what they're living with. If you don't know what you're living with, or if you think that's the life, at most you're gonna say, okay, if this is the life, then it's not what I'm like. I can't live this kind of life. That was me 3 years, every day. How am I gonna do it? Do I just drive off the cliff? Like, how do I actually kill myself? I was literally considering every day after work, how do I actually kill myself? Until I took that time off and actually said, you know what? You don't seem to be strong enough to kill yourself, so you better do something. And from that is where I not only found myself, but I used my experience as a fuel to do the work that I'm doing now. So, and again, not that everybody has to do that, but at least you get to that place of living life. Like, to me, life is beautiful now. I still have those moments, like I just shared my experience with what we're dealing with right now during this commemoration on my family side. But it's still, like, I live not just for me, I live for those we lost. And I believe when you get opportunity to do that, you know that your duty is bigger. Your purpose is bigger. You're here not just for you, you're here for everybody. You're here to make sure that their lives, their stories can be told in one way or another. And so, yeah, just the healing to me is holistic. It has to be. It can't be clinical only, can't be taking a retreat only, but I believe in all of those things. For example, we do retreats in the community a lot now, and a lot of it is just to just heal. And there's work involved, but there is a lot of healing, doing fishing, doing different things. Again, I agree. It's a privilege to be able to say, you know what, we're gonna take a retreat as a company or as a network. Not everybody's able to do that. So we also have to realize that there is that room. And that's where I think the collaboration piece, the question you asked me, how do we collaborate to create that capacity for communities, for organizations, for the village? I like to call it the village. How do we create that environment for our people to do the same thing? And I hope that we can get there, especially getting our people away from everyday life. Those who are ready, by the way. So I agree with Dr. Lisa Ndejuru about it has to be the people that are ready to engage in this work. But if we can pull them out of the ins and outs of the everyday struggle and find a way to support their family, but pull them out of that and take them somewhere for 6 months to just do the work on themselves. Now that's a dream. Like, that's a dream. Everything else, I think things like building villages and those are things we can do easily as long as we keep fighting. But the work of how do we get our people to that retreat and then in every year, that's a dream that I hope to hopefully working with all of you and others. This is why for me this is a lifetime journey. And it's always a privilege to be able to sit here and share and learn. I think a lot of learning also from the community, from my fellow Rwandans about what we can do. And I think we, again, I think even just being here is a privilege to be able to do this, but we have to, and we have to create that space for others to engage in what we're doing as well.
Thank you so much. I see that we're going a little bit past time, and these are very important conversations, and hopefully next time we can allocate more time to it so that we can fully share and engage. But I would like to invite the participants to please ask the questions to our panelists. Like, just as a reminder, you have the option to either post your question in the chat, or you can just raise your hand, and we'll have Yuhi and Pasha help us with just giving you the space and unmuting you so that you can ask your questions. And again, thank you so much to our panelists, Kizito, Lydia, and Dr. Ndejuru. This is an amazing conversation, and I'm really grateful for your participation. Questions, please post them in the chat, or again, raise your hand.
There's a question in the chat that was sent earlier. We would love to hear how survivors in our community have been able to overcome the trauma to become forgivers and then self-development and participants of Rwanda rebuilding effort, as well as life lovers again.
I don't know who wants to take that on. You can all have an opportunity to answer if you have. Dr. Ndejuru?
to me, it's really important to understand where the question is coming from. Is it a question that comes from someone who is wondering, from a place of, sometimes we lose hope, huh? Like, can we actually get out of this? Like Kizito was talking about, being at the end of it, right? He talks about like suicide, right? Like ideas of suicide, and sort of where suicide means that life is so unbearable, right? That you don't want it anymore, right? That you'd rather, like, you want it to stop hurting so bad, right? And so does the question come from the place of, does it ever get better, right? Is that the question underneath? And to that question, I would say, yes, that it can get better. Like Kizito was saying, he likes life now, right? It gets better. Do people are survivors contributors to? Yes, they're drivers in our society, be it at home on the continent or at large in the diaspora. Survivors are drivers of us, of beautiful things, necessary things. Loving life again, to me, there's something in there that it's as though they were thinking that survivors don't love life anymore, which is it's a huge generalization. We can't. What makes you think that they don't, right? So I would need to know more in order to answer the question, if that's okay. Yeah.
I don't know if the person who asked the question would like to give some context to the question.
I think as a survivor can respond to that question. For me, I think it's a clear question because it's actually a question often asked to survivors directly. If anybody see you, a mother, anybody, the community, it's all about, oh my goodness, how were you able to do this after surviving as such a tragedy? So honestly speaking, it could be a complex answer because what sustained me, it's not what sustained somebody else. And I think there is somebody who addressed this, Bedet, as well in the comment. Bedet is somebody you can consider invite in the future events. She has done amazing work in the trauma areas. She resides in US, but she's amazing in her work as well. She said how you can be in the same room, but at the same time have different experiences. So on how you respond to the trauma. So I think maybe this question can go on an individual level or collective level, which is individual level, not gonna lie, the environment, community support is so important for survivors. Many of us did not have families, did not have enough people around us, but some of us maybe survived through church support, survived through maybe joining traditional dance groups. If I can tell my experiences, being part of traditional dance groups, being part actually surviving at an orphanage where among many other people, that's something that helped me to be resilient. I could see that I was not alone. So even knowing that, I know over the time we have come to learn that we cannot generalize the need of survivors because all of us experienced a genocide. We have to see this on an individual level, but this shared collective trauma as well on some level, it's something that helped us to survive in a way. Because there was a way I could lose myself, or a survivor feel like, there is no hope. But when I look at my sister, my brother, my fellow survivor, I can gain hope again in a way. I can have hope in continuing tomorrow, trying to having the ability to try again for tomorrow. So it could be so many things. I've had the privilege personally to attend that therapy. That's something really, really helped me to. I often tell a story how losing my sister in 2018. I lost my sister because of she was living the impact of unhealed trauma. That's what took her. Mm-hmm. And losing my sister gave me an opportunity to grieve my parent. So imagine 30 years, maybe 20 plus years later, I didn't know that I needed to grieve my parent until there's a loss that reminded me, oh, this image of another parent you thought you have, it's gone. Now think about the other one. So that privilege of therapy is something that I was so fortunate. And I know many survivors do not have access. That's why most of us are standing, trying our best. What can we do? What can we offer? That really helped me to release at least. Dr. Ndejuru said something like, the idea is not that we take away all the pain, but when it doesn't hurt as much as it used to be, so that we are not able to carry on with our work. So when you start releasing, for sure, it is so painful. It's not that easy, but at the same time, it get lighter, your body get lighter. You start, Kizito saying, I like life now. So that's how we start feeling like, now the luxury is in, oh my goodness, that feeling, how these perpetrators managed to make me feel for my future survival in a similar circumstances. I have the right to stand up for myself. I have the right to fight. I have the right to live. This life is worth living because I am here. So I think we can give a lot of answers. And I would say also becoming a mother is something that really, really filled my heart with so much love, so much forgiveness. When I think about perpetrators, I remember 2018, I was 19, I was invited at the opening of one of the biggest museum of the Holocaust Museum. And they asked me a question. They were like, how were you able to forgive? And I told them, what maybe I did not forgive, but the tolerance, because I don't think I forgive, but the tolerance was in that when I recognized that the perpetrators of the 1994, these are children were raised and fed of hate from the moment they were born. So when they were killing our fathers or parents, they were not killing people and they believed it. When I was 6 years old, I believed that Imotani were cockroaches because that's what they told me. At 6 years old, as a child, I believed it. Imagine this. I'm not trying to defend them. That's not a reason, but that's my perspective that I created in order to tolerate these actions of these people that, for me, I don't even use forgiveness. How do we tolerate? How do we not allow these part of the population to overcome our ability to move forward and really live without just having to survive anymore? And also a quick reminder all the time to remind myself all the time, you are safe. Because often as survivors, especially that I'm raising kids now, if my son is outside, there's that fear. Oh my goodness, will something happen? But I have to remind myself, no, in a similar circumstances, my son will do differently because I have educated differently. So reminding myself, and those are some of the tools you gain from therapy, you gain from healing work. I encourage my fellow survivors. I know sometimes they could be, oh, I don't want to be part of those programs of Rwandans. People know me. I'm going to tell you, maybe it doesn't hurt as much. When it hurts as much, I'm going to encourage you, whatever available services, if it's not appropriate as you wish. My therapist for almost 2 years was a Korean woman who had no idea about the genocide against the Tutsi, but I owe my life to this woman at some level because she gave me this space to process and release, and it got lighter. And that even now I'm learning more. I'm even applying these holistic tools that I don't even need necessarily from therapy. So don't be shy or feel like, you know what, these white women or these white people, what can they do? At the moment, we have limited resources. You know, I don't say go whatever, but if there is an opportunity, try. I am not pushing you, but give it a chance, because as Dr. Ndejuru was saying, it's like taking away 1%. 1% of the pain. Maybe 1 year you take out 2%, but in 10 years, there's 10% lighter than keeping that in you. So we can say a lot, but thank you so much. And yeah, that's what I can say.
Thank you. So just because of we're very limited in time, there's one question that we have from the chat that Yuhi's going to read out. Also, we will give Dr. Rwagatare time to speak. I think he has his raised, and that will be all for today. We'll just go to the conclusion. Thank you, Yuhi.
This message is from someone who wishes to remain anonymous. How can one heal in a community where they don't understand trauma and its symptoms, where you see survivors suffering, but also being judged by other survivors?
So I'm going to attempt, and I'm attempting to answer this again from lived experience, not as a clinician or as a professional. One thing I believe is there has to be what I call bubbles, you know. So the people who are at the same level in terms of sharing stories, for example, because it begins there. Those people can come together and then start coming together. At some point, you get more people that you can join with. Of course, you also look at the people that are ready to go through therapy and others. I think we have to be careful not to expose our stories to people when we're not ready to even there is a process, as we talked about. So someone like this who is asking this question has to not look at the broader community. They just need to look at themselves, as we talked about. Like focus more on your healing journey, not so much about the community. Eventually, you would find other community groups that are ready to that are ready to be where you are. And those are the people you need to work with. Don't worry about the broader community yet. Like that is maybe something for the organizations and groups that are looking to do the work at a broader level. But for you, I think you need to focus on who is in my bubble that I can talk to, who is in my village that I can talk to, who are the other people that are where I am, that I can maybe create a trusting advisory community of people that I can go to when I'm going through a tough time. That to me is where you should start, and not so much worry about how the community is doing. Our community, like 6-7 years ago when I did the work from Toronto to Montreal, we were at a different place. We couldn't even talk about these things. And now we are actually talking about them. Not all of us, but some of us are. And so we have a long way to go as a community. And I think we will continue to push step by step. But in the meantime, if you're ready to do the work for yourself, on yourself, focus on you and find the people that are in that space with you and just focus on those people. If you wait for the whole community to be able to embrace you and feel like this is a community I can be comfortable with, I would say that would take a little longer. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of raising awareness and removing the stigma when it comes to mental health and PTSD and trauma. And so I would just focus on what is the bubble that I can find myself in. And that means, if that means it's just a bubble of like two survivors that understand what you're going through, that is the bubble you should work with. And then eventually it's gonna grow. Trust me, it will grow. Mine has grown, and I always thought I was alone until I started sharing my story, and I realized, oh, many of us are dealing with the same thing. And the triggers or the time for healing comes at a different time for everybody. You know, some people would be in their 30s, some people will be early in their 20s, It all depends. How old were you when you lived through the genocide against the Tutsis? How was your brain? At what level was your brain? Was it developed enough to even understand what was happening? Some of us know people that were not even born yet, and are still dealing with the post-traumatic syndrome, and this is more transgenerational trauma that we're talking about. So everybody is going to have their journey. So I would say just focus on you and the people that you can relate with, and if that is just you, then it begins with just you, honestly.
Thank you so much. I don't know if any other of our panelists want to also answer the question before we go to the raised hand. If not, we can just, if so, you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, you can just get a question. So I'll invite Patrick to just unmute and ask your question. The raised hand. Thank you. Or maybe, I don't know if Pasha or Yuhi can unmute them. I'm not sure if they have the ability to unmute themselves.
They can unmute themselves.
So you have the floor. Patrick, if you're in this, you can hear us.
Ok. Bonjour tout le monde. Je voudrais tout d'abord m'excuser parce que c'est ce que je disais à Madame Immaculée, que j'ai pas eu de nouvelles depuis qu'on s'est parlé il y a de cela un mois. Donc, moi, je pensais tout bonnement qu'on a peut-être échangé aussi de dates. C'est pour cela que je ne me suis pas présenté, que je n'étais pas là avec vous à l'heure. Hein. Cependant, quand je me suis connecté, j'ai pu, en tout cas, j'ai essayé d'attraper le train en marche, comme on dit. Hein. Je voudrais tout d'abord vous remercier pour avoir organisé ce séminaire qui, à mon avis, est extrêmement intéressant. En tout cas, quand on parle du trauma et guérison au cours des 30 dernières années dans la communauté rwandaise, moi, j'aurais aimé vous partager l'expérience du Rwanda en rapport avec le devenir du trauma infantile, c'est-à-dire des personnes qui étaient des enfants pendant le génocide et qui, pour le moment, sont des personnes adultes. Et je voudrais insister principalement sur ceux qui ont des difficultés à se relever de ce qu'ils ont vécu. Mais comme on n'a pas suffisamment de temps, je crois qu'on aura l'occasion d'en discuter. Et
Absolument.
si vous voulez, il y a un colloque international qui est organisé au mois de juin ici au Rwanda, sur la résilience, et je vais présenter ce sujet. Il y aura, c'est un colloque présentiel, mais il y aura également une possibilité de participer par Zoom comme pour le moment. Ceux et ceux qui voudraient bien être avec nous et échanger sur cette expérience seraient bienvenus. Donc, je ne vais pas vous encombrer encore une fois avec ma présentation, mais je crois qu'on aura le temps d'en discuter. Par ailleurs, s'il y a une ou l'autre question en rapport avec ce sujet, je me ferai plaisir de répondre. Merci.
Absolument. Merci beaucoup, docteur. Vous pouvez mettre vos informations ou vous contacter dans le chat, comme ça, ce sera disponible pour tout le monde. Et si vous avez déjà les informations pour le colloque en juin, de comment s'y joindre par Zoom, vous pouvez aussi partager ça avec tout le monde. Ce sera un plaisir. Donc, merci tout le monde. Merci pour votre temps. Je vais donner la parole à Pacha pour faire le mot de clôture de ma part. Ça a été vraiment un honneur de faire partie de cette conversation et merci encore à tout le monde d'avoir participé.
So I would like to thank everyone that's participating right now. Also, I would like to thank the panelist, Mr. Kizito. It was the first time. He had really interesting things to say today. And also, Dr. Lydia Ndejuru. Ce n'est pas la première fois qu'elle vient participer à nos conférences. Elle est toujours là prête à participer dans sa communauté. Also, I would like to thank Lydia, who also is really implicated in the community and who also, on the behalf of the Rwandan community, is talking from the survivor perspective. And also thank you to Orchidée, who was a great MC for today. Elle a bien animé la session avec des bonnes questions. And I would like to thank for everyone that's taking their time today to connect with us and share questions, testimonies. We also have on the group chat some resources. We'll send it, but we also have on the website. You can find the chat. And that will conclude the conference. So thank you all again and have a good day.